So it's the Sunday. It's been a while. It was last Sunday I did a stream, which is good. That's awesome. Someone's here. I love it when people join. It's all about hanging out and having a chat. Yeah, you know. Um, so I had in the thing, um, in the just the name of the title of the video and the description was close to finishing my guitar. It's in the next room. Um, I haven't set up to actually be in the workshop area to work on it because I just thought I'll just chat for a while. And last time I taped it up and glued it with the resin, so this time we'll just chat because I'm still sanding it. I can show you what I've done so far, but I'm just taking my time now, and I'm busy doing a lot of things. I'm doing 2 courses, short courses, business course, so I can work for myself, and a permaculture course, and they're both going really well. It's difficult trying to do 2 things at once at the moment, but I'm doing all right with it. I've got a few deadlines this week, so it's given me stuff I've got to get done. What else? Like things are pretty good at the moment. I had a few tough weeks the last few weeks, and then things are just. I'm getting better at managing triggers and getting upset, and it's such an easy thing to get upset about things and to, and this is the thing, trauma and it, when you have things that, not just trauma, just things that are unresolved, they stick around and then you get upset about things so easily. And it does require working on things to get past that. And, I've made so much progress, but I still get stuck by these things, like I get upset by things. I get angry about things. And it's okay to be upset about things. It's okay to be angry about things. It's how you deal with it, It's how you express it or hold it in. You hold things in, it gets you so upset, like there's nothing worse than, sometimes you get upset by, when I say, like, I'm just speaking generally. So I'm speaking from personal experience most of the time. When I get upset and it's more so when I get upset about things that I can't do anything about, but then it affects things I can do things about, and that upsets me even more. So sometimes I'll get heavily triggered, and it has a full-on. I'll get a body reaction, physical reaction, and pain, and can't think properly, lose motivation, all that stuff. And then I'll get stuck on thinking about all the times that I've been hurt, or I'll get triggered, and then it'll cause me to then become more triggered by other stuff that I've had progress in resolving. So it's really unfortunate. It's like a snowball effect. You know what I mean? We've got someone here, highly sensitive healer. Awesome. I haven't seen you for ages, mate. Like, oh, well, it's been a while. I don't know, maybe a month or 2. How you going, mate? It's good. I jumped into one of your streams recently. But yeah, I was a bit busy, so I had to jump out again. But how you going, man? Like, good to see you here. Yes, highly sensitive healer says chain reaction. Exactly. That's what happens, isn't it? Like one thing, and then it leads to the next thing. And then, yes, ruminating. All those things combined, isn't it? Like, so you get upset, and then you get more upset. And then you think about things, and then the thing is, you're already in a predisposition for having a negative thought about, or negative slant towards something that you could have a more neutral position on, or even a positive position. But because it's the ruminating, you're already in that thing, and then it just gets more difficult, and that's unfortunate. Hey, highly sensitive healer says, yeah, it's been a long time, my friend. Yeah, it was good. It's always good when you're here, mate. He continues that they have these crowns now. I don't fully understand. I don't understand them either, because I think they're trying to like reward people for engagement, and it's cool, but it's funny, like I don't get it either. But YouTube's always trying out new things, see how it works. MJG's here as well. Awesome. MJG says, hi Luke, hi all, I'm listening on the background. Awesome. Glad you're here. Much love. And MJG's got the heart and the thumbs up. Yeah, highly sensitive healer says, me too. And that's, I guess, about the crowns. Like, it's, don't know what it is. And then highly sensitive healer saying hello back to MJG. Says hello there. MJG's got the smiles. So yeah, the getting that thing happening where you're, it's easier to I get upset about things all the time, and then I get but I don't know. I wish I was I wish I was able to not, but it's not easy to just do that, So how do we like, how do we fix any of that? Well, some people go through life and they don't get affected by things. And so maybe we can learn from those people. Ask them, how do you not get upset by the stuff? And they might have an answer, Highly sensitive healer says, my anger can be embarrassing sometimes. That's a great comment. And thanks for being open about that. I agree with myself too. I get upset and I'll get angry, and then I'll I'll sometimes I'll say things that I didn't mean, so, and that's really unfortunate. And then I feel embarrassed, and some people's anger is actually like, I'm guessing your anger, highly sensitive healer, is very much just speaking sternly or loudly or something, and that's mine generally, like, or I'll be upset and then I'll become negative towards things that I'm normally positive about, and that's where I get embarrassed too. But it's like, if I'm, and this is something that I've helped with the reading the nonviolent communication books, is learning how to express anger is a powerful thing, because it's, anger is something that we get from being misunderstood, being treated badly, lots of things. Being able to express it in a way that is non-violent. Some people are literally violent when they get angry, like physically violent, and that's not good at all. I've in my life, I've gotten angry and broken things in the past. That's the worst I've gotten, is to do that. And I felt ashamed about that as well. you know. Kat's here as well. Awesome. Kat says, hi all. Awesome to see you here, Kat. Highly sensitive healer says, I've broken a few phones before. Yes, exactly. So I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Highly sensitive healer says, hello there. Awesome. Saying hello to Kat. So, yes, I've thrown a cell phone at the ground before, and I was really upset at that time, and I was treated really badly by someone, and my only reaction was to throw the phone at the ground. And again, I felt bad afterwards, you know. But yeah, some people have got a problem where they can't control their anger, you know, and it becomes dangerous, you know, and either to themselves or people around them. But being open to talk, it's something that we all have. Is like some people get on, you know, social media and they complain about things. I do that myself as well, and I've done that many times. Gone and posted stuff and then got like because I was angry. Sometimes I've done it in a way where it was constructive and I was able to channel that, how angry I was, into it. So people could tell I was angry, but they didn't get offended by the fact that I was angry. And I think this is a key to expressing your anger fully, is to do it properly. Doesn't hurt the other person, doesn't offend the other person, doesn't make them worried or afraid, because people become very scared, very upset, very worried when they experience someone who is angry, because they don't know if that person's going to go from being angry to violent. Because people who have got people who are or are violent or have the ability or capacity or whatever, it puts fear into people. So I'm such a sort of very passive person. You know, I can be really depressed but still laugh. You know, I have this thing where I can be smiling but I'm crying on the inside, all that sort of stuff. If I change my tone of voice and I get very angry and my expressions show it, people get upset by it, you know, and I rightly so, because humans have a fear response to people's reactions, and so it's this thing. Hey, so MJG says hi, Kat, with a smiley face. Kat says hi, guys. Hope you're well. Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty good. I've got a lot of stuff I got to get finished this week. Like, I got some assignment work for this course and work around the house, but I'm excited to get all, you know, there's some amazing things in my life that are going to get better and better. I complete this course in a week so I can start my small business and do mindfulness. So much good stuff, you know. I'm getting to meet with a good friend, and we're working on this not-for-profit together. So that's really special. There's a lot of good things. Awesome. Harmony Seeker's here as well. It's been a while, Harmony Seeker. I hope your course is going well with your studies in being a counsellor. I'm excited to hear more. But yeah, I was been thinking of you a bit recently, Harmony, and I've been meaning to email, but you know, I've explained how bad I am with emails, so please forgive me for not reaching out. But it's great that you're here, and I hope everything's good. Highly sensitive healer's got the hang loose emojis. MJG says hi, Harmony. Awesome. Highly sensitive seeker says Harmony Seeker. It's a great name, my friend. It is, isn't it? It is a great name. I think see, a name like that is a very positive, friendly thing, you know. I love it. I love it too. I think it's beautiful. Harmony Seeker says, change course, now doing disability studies so I can work in the NDIS sector. Oh, that's good. That's really good. You know, well, I mean, it's, you know, it's, I think you'd be a great counselor, but also those skills you have for that, you know, you're going to be great in that too. And I'm glad that you found something. And look, sometimes it takes changing courses a few times until you find exactly what's going to work. And I think you'll be great. You know, I've been looking at doing similar things so that I can work, do the nature therapy and mindfulness with people on NDIS. So I'd love to chat to you sometime about that. So yeah, we'll try and line up a chat sometime. Highly sensitive healer says altruistic, good stuff, Harmony. That's awesome. Harmony Seeker says, yeah, counseling is just too heavy for me. It will take 3 years, but worth it. True. So you will do well with your work too. I know you will. Oh, thank you, Harmony. Yeah, cheers. It's taken a long time, but I'm getting there. You know, and I guess that's a big thing, is to stick with it. And I've gone through several changes with things. You know, thinking I was going to go do this, and then it's not going to work that way. Do this, you know, like move on to something else, and then, but it's sticking on that sticking with the path, you know, and following it where it goes. So, thank you. Highly sensitive healer says you already are, Luke. Oh, cheers, brother. That's awesome. I've just got to keep doing it, eh? So these courses are going to help. So I guess here's something. It is extremely difficult with complex trauma, not being able to function fully, to actually push to get to that point. But luckily, I'm very fortunate. I'm in a position where I don't have to. Things can take a little bit longer for me, you know, and so even though things have been put to the side for a while, they're still there, you know, and that gives me confidence that things aren't wasted, you know. Even when I've given up on things and I've changed what I want to do, I've never really given up on them. I've still learned what I've learned from that, and it carries through to the next thing I do, you know. And it's not, things aren't always failures. Sometimes they are failures, and being able to call them out as failures, you know, that's only in relation to a particular thing, because in reality, everything we do is learning and getting better. You know, it's only when we go backwards and backwards, that's when we need to say, look, things aren't working out, you know. And that's when for me, I look at what I'm doing in my life that's causing that, you know. Highly sensitive healer says, do you know your personality type, Luke? or anyone else here. I don't. I know I've done some of those questionnaire things, and there's the Native American personality thing with the spirit animals. I remember doing that. So that's interesting. No, maybe that's something I should look at more, because yeah, I'm interested in that. Highly sensitive healer says, you only fail if you never try. There you go. That's a good way to look at it. So it's a great way to. That's a really great way to look at it, because when you go back and you're like, well, what am I? If I never tried to do something or achieve something, and then I don't end up getting there, then that's when I can really be, I guess, upset at myself for not getting there or giving up. But yeah, it's because I've given up before I've really tried. But then I look at things where I have tried and it has not worked, but I haven't completely given up. And then later on, I can come back to it and then pick it up and then go back to it again. And in that time from when I first started to where I'm at then later, I've learned more about the world. I've learned more about myself. I've learned more skills. So when I go back to that thing, it's even better. And sometimes that happens where it's like, oh, I'm glad that I actually stopped at that point when I had that first failure or, hurdle or roadblock or whatever. And then I've gone, well, now that I've come back to this, I'm even better prepared for what I'm wanting to do. I've got more knowledge or skills or resilience or whatever. Highly sensitive healer says, and this is about personality types, it says, I'm an ENFP. I'd guess that you are either INFP or INFJ. Yeah. I will look into those. I remember reading up about all those, but then it's been a while. So like I am interested now. I often think that, I'm very sort of difficult to sort of, pinpoint exactly where or what I am, and but I'm comfortable in myself. That's the main thing. I'm happy and comfortable in myself, even though I'm not happy and comfortable about the world. But I can't let that bring me down, because that's the world is the way it is, and how I react to the world and how I can push on and keep doing these things, working on myself and, you know, I think that's how things get better over, because if other people see, I get strength from seeing other people's strength and seeing that, and then that reminds me. And then if other people's do the same thing with being nice to people, you know, um, that's a big thing. Um, I get a lot because I've got the social anxiety, but then when I have good positive interactions with people, whether they're people I know or people are strangers, that reassures me and makes me feel good. That yeah. Harmony Seeker says I'm an INFJ. or INTJ. Highly sensitive healer says, awesome, Harmony. Thank you for sharing. And when you read about it, did it sound like you? Highly sensitive healer says, yeah, I'm not either. So, like, yeah, that's it. I think there's these things because we all grow and progress. We go through changes in life. I am the person I am now is not the person I was last year or the year before, or So it's an interesting thing, some things are ingrained, or which just because something's ingrained doesn't mean it's never going to change. So there's this thing, things will want to jump back, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be there forever. And it's very difficult to change habits. And I've got this book over there. I've got to get back reading it. It's called Atomic Habits, and I started reading it, but it's all about creating habits, and it's a lot of work. Yeah, highly sensitive healer says practice makes permanent. That's exactly it. It takes that, and that's what it's all about, keeping it going. So highly sensitive healer says, sorry for blowing up in the chat, blowing up the chat, but this combo is right up my alley. Nah, that's awesome, brother. Like, it's all about that. Like, we all, if and everyone's welcome to just put in, and especially when it's like that, when it's something that, if I'm saying something that resonates or something that you can, like, please contribute. I love that, so we got so many. I tell you what, like, we do have so many tools in the world for right now, for us all to be doing. We're all doing this work here. We're working on learning more about how life is, how the world is, how we are, what we can do to change, what needs to change, what needs to stay the same, all these things. We also have at the moment an overabundance of information too. So it can be overwhelming, it can be difficult. So when things get like that, what do? Well, what I do is I limit. When I get to a point where there's too much, I pull back, because I think, oh well, there's too much going on, and because to me, we already, from our own experience, have understandings of how things work, whether it's relationship dynamics or the way the society or the governments work, and all these sorts of things. They are so complex, and the thing is, there's lots of differing views, and we are at a time in history where there is so much information out there being, we can be overwhelmed by it all. So what I do is to actually consciously step back every so often, limit, because in some ways I want to be sure, like, a good thing that I do is to when I when I'm reading a book, I like to have a critical, well, anything really, like reading a book, listening to a podcast, anything. Um, have a critical view on it. Be accepting of that the information is there and that it could be good information, very useful information. So it's agreeing to it or not necessarily disagreeing with it. And sometimes I will disagree with it. And but then when that happens, that's like, well, that's good. But it's good for me to learn more about it then. Sometimes I'll be like, well, for instance, I get very upset with I guess the complexity of things, you know. Um, we have this thing about information being there's so much being curated by these algorithms, and now you have these, and then you have this element of oversaturation. So how do you find the stuff that's applicable? Well, does it resonate? And having that, not necessarily critical in the sense that you're going to say no to everything. It's more or presume anything, but just to as you're and as you're learning something, cross-reference and think about it rather than just absorb that information. And I think that helps to actually even understand things, because when you're doing that, you're focusing it, you're being more present, you're thinking about what it actually is rather than just, you know, having that information and then presuming that that's what it is. It's, I think that really helps. So it's really helped me, at times to actually both have, it's like a healthy thing, you know. And for instance, science has an agreed upon um, understanding of things, and then 50 years later or even 10 years later it all changes completely. So, and the same thing happens in life too. But that's why, like, there's a certain amount retains and a certain amount changes. Highly sensitive healer says, I utilize my intuition as well. Yeah, that is good. It does help when it's absolutely, because it's really upsetting when you don't follow that and then it hurts later because you didn't listen to that. And that's a really good one. Highly sensitive healer says, I'll combine real life experiences with information data and use my intuition. I think that's a good combination. That's a good combination. Real life experiences with the information and data and your intuition. And when you think about that, that's a really, you can give more emphasis on one or the other thing, but taking into account all of those things. I think that's really powerful because there's so much to, like, when you, those three things, when you focus on one as the authority and you don't take into account the other things, then that's setting up for disaster, because just because it's, for instance, if it's going off information or data, that information could be out, you could learn something and then it could be outdated, or it could be false information. We all know that so much research is skewed so that it's not necessarily accurate, and then it gets revised over time when they find out that it wasn't done properly. So things that they call a scientific research is not actually scientific because it's got falsified data and that. And that's where, if you take into account your experiences, then you go, well, no, this isn't what happened like that for me. And then you have the intuition, the gut feeling, and then you go, well, but then if you look at all three things, I think that could be very powerful. So that's not to deny that, even when things change in scientific research, for instance, that doesn't mean that, it's wrong. It's probably mostly correct, but it's not completely correct. And that's where the other things come in to balance that out. That's a really good way to look at things. So yeah. And that's why, like, when I talk about my experiences a lot, and if they resonate with other people's experiences here, then that's where you can go, well, other people have had the same experiences, so I'm not, well, for starters, you're not alone. And then the other thing is then you're not, there's other people out there that understand that these things are complex. So just because I have a critical outlook towards information doesn't mean I'm going to say no to things or disregard things. I'm just not going to follow it without looking further, or sometimes I agree with things like that. I'm just like, yep, that's spot on. And I often agree to people's comments here, pretty much all the time, because we're in a situation where we're sharing our experiences that are very similar, and so we are going to get more agreement. And what a big thing that we talk about here in the chat, we talk about how things are complex and there is multiple sides to a story or things that, for instance, in order to heal, you can't just do one thing. You've got to do multiple things, and that I think that's why we have these great conversations, is that we do actually have a positive critical outlook on things, that we see that things are sometimes misinterpreted generally in the world, and that we've done the work, we've actually researched things and looked at things, and then we can go, well, it's actually this and this, not just this. So absolutism is a big thing, like not being able to just accept that, being able to accept that you're wrong. Actually, I was in the car today, and I was there was a man walking along with his shopping, and he had a T-shirt on, and it said, "I may be wrong," but I couldn't read what was written below it. It had something written below it. It just said, "I may be wrong," and I was like, I couldn't see what it was written, but he was walking in a way I couldn't actually read it, and I was like, I wonder what that said. But the thing underneath it was written in a different font, so I couldn't tell. But how funny is that? Like being open to that is a big thing. Accepting that things are more complicated than a simplistic answer. Sometimes a simple answer can help, but to enforce that is not a good thing, because then that's denying the ability to even question. And so if you're someone who through life experience has gone, well, when people are forceful like that and they don't actually have a open debate about things, then they're denying this a side to something. And so that makes you wonder whether they have a motive for that. And regardless of motive, it's also, it's not fair. So, you can go too far with that too. You could give too much allowance to many things, and then the priority doesn't get given the attention it needs. So I think finding balance on both sides. Highly sensitive healer says you can't have debates with most people here in this country. It's bad. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, mate. And I think it's very similar here. Like you can have, if you can have good debates with people here, but certain things are just off. Just yeah, it makes things. It's very unfortunate, because I think I find people who don't want, or people who don't want to hear that there are multiple sides to a story, they will shut debates down, and they get very aggressive, and they resort to straw man arguments, ad hominem attacks. It makes it very difficult. Um, and it's been one of my things throughout life is um, to explain that there is multiple sides to things, that it doesn't make things right or wrong, but to not even speak about other things, then it makes it, it's, yeah, quashing debate, I guess they call it. It's not good. Um, we also live in a world where, if you look at the way certain arguments go, um, there are lobbies and agendas behind certain things not even being allowed to be talked about. And that's understandable for some things. But for most things, it means that whoever controls the narrative of the debate of what is allowed to be talked about or not, well, for one, it shows their allegiances, but it also shows their oppressive nature of not wanting to talk. And so these things are, they create disillusionment. Um, I think it's great when, you know, when you do have people you can chat with that are open-minded, um, have good morals, open-minded, and are happy to talk about the complexities of things without following one particular view. It's That's when great conversations happen, I think. You know, I talk about stuff. I talk about um, horrible things that have happened in the world and the people or the groups responsible for that. And I think it's horrible. But often these groups that do horrible things also do good things. And I try to acknowledge that not everything is all completely bad. You know what I mean? Um, but we do live in a world where if you criticize, could be anything really, but anything that's got a big industry behind it, or as soon as you say something against um, even inconsequential thing or something that's not so major, suddenly you're being labeled or as something, anti this or anti that, or um, pro this or pro that. Lots of things are complicated, and this is, as we live in a world where people are polarized by nature, by society, and by the media, by through um, we are segregated and split up into groups that then fight amongst ourselves and then fight against each other, rather than get together and have a conversation and have a debate about things. I've got lots to talk about. I want to do a video about the misconceptions. I want to do a stream about misconceptions about trauma, misconceptions about um, classifications and diagnoses of behaviors into conditions, And I'd love to actually do that, but I think I'd get censored because you're not allowed to have conversations like that. Maybe I need to just try and see, do it in a very constructive way. But I think there is a lot of misconceptions about things. Yeah, highly sensitive healer says introduces bias. Yes, it does. That's going back to what I was saying earlier, is that not only the polarization thing, because once people are polarized into a particular mindset or ideology, they then defend it because there's the cognitive dissonance thing. Even when they realize that part of what they've been led to believe or what they believe is not, they fight against that. And there's a fear aspect to that as well, because the fear of speaking out, then you become a target because you're seen as someone who's going against the norm or whatever. Yeah, here's an example. Highly sensitive healer said, I thought all dams were bad and made negative impacts. I was wrong. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They can have, dams can have very negative effects on an environment, but they can also have a very positive effect. You look at what beavers do. When they create dams, they heal parts of the ecosystem. So some dams are very destructive. Some dams are very productive and healing. So you know, that's a good example of having, like, if you have an absolutist outcome of like all dams are bad, then you can't, then you need to, and this is where when you're looking at things, you say, well, what are the negative impacts? What are the positive impacts? And then you can sort of work out how good or bad something is. Who's affected. So things that were, for instance, with dams, things that were problems in the past, like fish or eels or crayfish or whatever it is swimming upriver gets to the dam, they can't get up. They're working out ways to allow them to get to move between the places. So over time, things can get improved, and regulation can be bad itself, but if it's done in a constructive way, then that can improve the function of dams, just using these examples. So like over time, like you can look at, there's some dams are put in the wrong place, some dams are put in the best place, and they prevent problems. So I think that's a good outlook, but then and also being able to see how your views have changed based on learning more, which is a really good thing, is being able to understand. Once you understood more about something, it changed the view that you once had, which was more stringent. Yeah, highly sensitive healer says there are reasons why they're a good thing to have. They definitely have their negative impacts though, and the negatives are starting to outweigh the positives now. A dam prevented that wall of water to continue down the river in Texas on July 4th. Yeah, exactly. If that dam and no, if that dam and man-made lake wasn't there and it wasn't only at 40% full, that wall of water would have continued down that river and hurt more people and wrecked way more property. Exactly. So that's a really great example of it creates mitigation. It slows down. So a big thing is it was at 40%. So management. We've had bad floods here in this country and in this city even, and when when the water was released to a certain point, it's allowed to work and do its job as mitigation, not only as a water supply and reservoir. So um, whoever was managing that that lake and dam down in Texas were smart in making sure it was at 40%. Imagine if that was at 90% or 100% when that rain came through. It would have been a disaster. So it, thing, it for something to work, it has to have the right management. So something that's mismanaged will either cause damage on an ongoing basis, or in the advent of a disaster, it won't actually do its job and create more of a situation. So it's a really great example of to talk about using dams as a thing, because there's lots of examples of where they've either made things better or made things worse. But either way, if they weren't there, then things would be worse when disaster strikes. It's a really good example. And every time these sorts of disasters happen, rather than we, get angry about this or that, like when we had floods 15 years ago, they they really should have released water in the week previous or weeks previous, and they didn't. And that's what then caused. But then, rather than blame them for that, at least now they have more of a they went through that disaster. So now, when things get to a certain point at a certain time of year, they release water. They don't want that to happen again. So learning from mistakes is a big thing for these crucial and critical things, and we can look at infrastructure like dams similar to the way we look at things we have in our life, so some rivers should never have a dam on it. They should flow completely, but then some can, you know um, human civilizations have utilized the altering of river systems and waterways forever almost, humans have actually created rivers. Okay, I'll explain how. So in Europe, they have the river people that would travel up and down rivers, building settlements along the way. You also have ancient peoples that would find water sources, and they would nurture that water source. And then over time, it would actually create a stream, a river. Altering a spring over time will change and develop, and it would get bigger and bigger and erode and become deeper. And the whole time, humans living there will actually feed off it. They'll get water from it. And so rivers are sacred to peoples all over the world. And there we go. Highly sensitive fuel says, yeah, it wasn't supposed to be at 40% though, lol. If it were at close to 100, they would have had to release all that water. Exactly. There you go. So that was very lucky for them that it was only at 40%. Hopefully, so in the case of this, they look at particular times a year. I know it's midsummer in the States where water usage is up higher, but that's also when your rainfall's higher. So that's when they need to have laws or regulation to say this is when you release. So hopefully after this event, they sort of put these things in place, This highly sensitive healer continues, no, they were in major drought. Officials didn't do it. Nature did it. There you go. Nature works its way, doesn't it? River rose 26 feet or 7.925 meters in 45 minutes. That is very fast. No wonder people just got washed away. One thing I find really, even though it's quite a contradiction, and that in science and academia, you have the episteme or the agreed upon truth, but then you have veritas, which is like the truth. But then like I said before, sometimes research is funded for an outcome and it's not necessarily done correctly. So you can't actually say it's true science unless it's done correctly. So things that could be stated turn out to be false. When you have research based on data that is agreed upon, as time progresses, technology gets better, research continues, new findings emerge, eventually the agreed upon changes. And we see by watching this whole thing, this field, which is public discourse, it has financial connection, has a social connection. Like there's all these things that affect these things. But we can see that it is celebrated when things change based on a better understanding. So on one side, you have a resistance to change. And then on the other side is when there's no doubt, then it's accepted and embraced and celebrated. So even though that exists, people that have a differing view will continually be disregarded or slandered or ostracized by the establishment because they're on the fringe and they're threatening the greater, which has vested interests. This very same paradigm exists everywhere on different scales as a social dynamic. And we can learn from these things, how we adapt, yes, highly sensitive healer says without bias. That's it. It's humans, again, so humans have a negative bias by nature. You can be a positive person but still have a negative bias. So I'm generally very positive about everything, that's should be positive about. And even things that, I'm optimistic and hopeful towards a brighter future, for instance, for humanity. Even though it's going in a trajectory which is bad, I can see that there is the potential, and that's hope. I can see that there is the potential for things to get better. And having a negative bias towards something is going to prevent having a positive outcome. Having a negative bias towards things within, having a positive hope and not giving up, but being realistic towards things that there are negative aspects within, will actually get you closer to a positive outcome. So, not trusting in the weather causes us to build houses because we got stuck in the rain and got hypothermia. And we couldn't keep our fires going and we froze, So that's foresight towards securing something based on not being negative. Oh, it's going to rain, it's going to storm, So but then those who go, oh, I don't care, like I'm just going to build a house and I'm not going to put any thought into making it strong. Big storm's going to come along and knock it over. So those that were negative towards not caring about only doing things to a certain point, it could be fine weather 350 days of the year, but those other 6 days are enough to damage the house. So is it negative to build a house that's stronger so that it can withstand those days? So these negative bias, I believe, is intrinsically part of us to survive. Just like anxiety is a part of us to make sure we don't get into danger. Intuition is part of us because that prevents us from getting into danger. So I think a big trick is with those things is to be aware of it and be able to call out our own negative bias towards things, be more open to multiple sides to an argument, be able to state why we have a certain belief a certain way, and things will become more simple then. I think we live in a world where debate is actually sanctioned, or not sanctioned, it's censored, so we can talk more even about the negative, and if we talk about biases, it's not disclosed, but it's obvious with things, um, language is used to carry this bias. So yeah, I love this. It's been a great chat tonight. Hey, I hope it's been interesting. I like the dam, talking about the dam. Yeah, highly sensitive healer says, I just know that nature always wins. Yep. Nature is a force that will just it will it'll balance out. Even when things go to a point of no return, it's just that's nature. That is the nature. But then on the same way, things in nature can be severely damaged, but then come back and flourish. Isn't that amazing? It really is. So a big thing is resisting against those things, People that try and push against nature, it's better to work with nature. And that's what I'm learning with this permaculture course. It's great. It's working with nature. I mean, if you're going to try and you can't stop it. It's such a powerful thing. It's gonna the climate, the wind, the weather, the rain, all these things, the animals, they're all going to do. It's nature. It's going to do what it does. You can be resilient and you can build your system to work with it and to adapt with it rather than try and push against it. Now, if you're building a boat, you're going against nature in some respect. So you have to build a boat to keep the water out. And that's pretty simple, But if you want the boat to not tear itself apart, it needs to have a bit of flex to it. If it's too rigid, it will shake itself apart, just like a building. Not always, but in most situations, things need a movability or an adaptation. So flexibility, Yeah, highly sensitive healer says, I didn't get in its way when it's pissed. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you let it do its thing. Hey, exactly, and also understanding of the power of it shows how being ignorant or naive to it will be the downfall, and whether that's people building too close to places where there's bushfires, or people living close to rivers. Yeah. But I think finding balance with all that. Highly sensitive Healer says, yeah, censorship is ridiculous nowadays. It is. I wish people could just get together and communicate and have conversations. But unfortunately, there isn't that ability to do that in a general way. I mean, we do have the ability in some sense on the internet, which is great, but at the same time, it's still heavily censored as a two-way medium, And then if you look at things like traditional media, which is more one-way medium, it's heavily censored, And so, what can you do? Highly sensitive Healer says, was just going to say that, lol. That must have been something I said just before. I'm just catching up on the chat. Yeah, it's been a blast. I believe nature is in the process of trying to rebalance itself as we speak. That's awesome. I think it is too. And, highly sensitive Healer does rock balancing. He gets rocks and he balances them on top of each other. And it's amazing work. It's art, So I think that finding balance is a big thing, So, yeah. We can learn from that ourselves, like we bring ourselves back into balance. Too much of one thing, not enough of the other. It causes difficulty, Yeah, it continues. Nature gives us warning signs. We've got to listen to them. Exactly. Got to listen, got to watch, got to see, got to feel, got to hear, got to think, all based on our experience, our intuition, our experience, and what we hear from others. Is that three things, like you were saying earlier. I've got to take a quick break. I'll be back in a minute. just while I'm here, this is what I had in the photo. So you can see I've sanded back the fretboard, and I've still got quite a bit of sanding to go. So you can see here at this end, I'm back to the fretboard. So it's got to slowly continue that all the way up. And you can't hear it, but I can feel it, like it's getting closer. So we're getting there. We're getting there. This is the difficult bit. I was telling a friend about this the other day. I've got to drill in here. It's you don't have much space, but I've got to make these holes here. I've got to make 3 of them bigger. So it's difficult because I've got to drill in there and I've got to drill in there. And there's not much timber there. It could be disastrous. So I've got to be careful. And I've got to use my Dremel attachment because unless I had a really long drill bit, which you don't get drill bits that are that size, that long, or they're very expensive. So it's a very crucial thing. When I drilled them out, I'm going to pour super glue into the holes to try and reinforce the inside in case any cracks or anything like that. Because when I put the strings on, I don't want this to break. So, but yeah, I'm getting there. Just thought I'd update you on where I'm at with this. But yeah, I'm finally getting back to the fretboard there. You can see it. And I think this is great. I'm going to do a bit more on it tonight. So it's been a great chat tonight. You know, I appreciate everyone being here. I probably could have held off for that break because I'm thinking I might end the stream soon. Just because I've got stuff to keep doing tonight. I've got a lot to do this week. We've had a great chat tonight. You know, so it's good we can chat about this stuff. I think it's great and positive that, you know, like being aware that things are complicated and complex. Still, you can be everyone's entitled to have views on things that they won't change. And some things, especially moralistically based, are non-negotiable. And some things require debate. But because they are put into this thing of not being able to talk about them, it makes it more difficult. So, and that creates a lot of frustration because people get hurt because things aren't done, you know, either to protect people from abuse or harm, or yeah. Um, that's something that really does upset me, is when there are things that we should talk about more, debate about more, and that could require more stringent laws or regulation, more so than less. Um, in a lot of these cases, because I think there's, when people get harmed, it's because things are let go, and bad people take advantage of that. So thanks, everyone. It's been great. I love that we can have this chat, even with a chat about debating and chatting about talking about things. How cool is that? Like, we need to keep this going. We need to bring back debates, bring back chats. Let's do it. You know what happens on social media when someone like we live in the era of rage bait and agitation propaganda. So we need to say, no, let's have a civilized debate about something. And in order to do that, we need to give people the opportunity to have their time to speak about something without the fear of being ridiculed or attacked. That, you know, if something's within reason, there should be no fear of speaking about it. And yet the silencing of opinion and debate is done in, it's so pervasive that people just aren't allowed to speak. MJG says, it's much about listening to each other's and respect. Oh, that's brilliant. Yes, it is. It is much about listening to others, to each other's, and to respect each other. Absolutely. Yep. Because being able to disagree, but openly listen to someone's opinion is such a powerful thing. You know, it's such a, it shows respect and to respect, exactly. Because there are reasons, and this is the thing, topics that are very contentious, they are, unfortunately, people aren't given respect on in either on both sides, or often on one side, where the dominant party just shuts down debate and disrespects the other side. And you know, it shows a lot of strength to be able to listen and in it respectfully, and to respect, not only respect the other side's standing or opinion, because again, if the topic is like, I'm not talking about things that are beyond, like things that are abhorrent and just bad, can't be they don't deserve debate. People can still debate them, but even in that situation, it won't make sense because it's clear. So, and this is natural. Nature, there is morality, it's pretty clear. People shouldn't hurt each other. The world should, people should look after each other, should look after nature. You know, based on that, there's all these things that are should not be given that opportunity. And if they were to even get debated, it would sound funny because people would be like, how can you debate about something that is evil or bad? Right? But then you have all of this stuff in the middle, like that is classed as undebatable because people are so angry, or one side has got a power domination over the other side. And then you also don't get the opportunity to even talk about it. So you have the censorship issue. And so you'll get adverse treatment. So people who are wanting to have a constructive conversation get treated like they are the worst. And they have, you know, their enemies actually use their powers to attack them through regulations. So they'll get the police to enforce stop thing, or they'll get they won't give them a forum. They'll have their place taken away from them where they want to explain what's going on. And often these are issues that are worthy of debate. Most things are really worthy of debate. And the most difficult ones are very difficult, you know. But, you know, good people know that things are pretty simple as far as how we should treat each other, how we should treat the planet we live on. So how we should treat ourselves as well. But I love that comment, MJG. Yeah, it is much about listening. Listening is a very powerful thing. I mean, I'm sitting here, the only person with a microphone, and I would love to have a setup in the future where people can join and you get a choice. Everyone gets a chance to speak here in the chat. I read it. I try and read every comment, and you know, but ultimately I'm the only one with the microphone speaking, but I'm still trying to create like a space where everyone gets heard. Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah, awesome. Are you sure says, hi Luke, hi everyone. I'm glad to wake up to this. Awesome. It is. It's early morning there now, isn't it? You'll have the morning birds and the sun rising. So yeah, we're very susceptible to I was linking earlier the dynamics of like what happens on the macro scale and what happens on the micro scale in respect to people who are dealing with abuse or coercion or being dominated or not being able to speak in their personal lives, in their people that they live around, it's very much what they see when they turn on the news or the commentary shows or see the discourse online or hear what the politicians are saying. And it creates disillusionment because, the same thing's happening in their lives as what's happening to everyone on a greater scale. And it's sad. So I think there's things that work and things that don't work, and there's things that can be dangerous or detrimental. So, I've known over the years lots of people who are very passionate about causes that went about trying to fix things or change the world or fight against the system. And whether it was their own, choice in what they did or the way they did it, or whether it was the way the world's already set up to stop people from, trying to make change. Because what we see is that it's only, unless it's following a particular agenda, then it's seen as it's what's the word? It's demonized, or slandered even. So people often come up with other ways to try and change things, and ultimately it's not. It's damaging. I've seen a lot of people to try and, they had great ideals to make the world better, and then they went about trying to go up against this Goliath, thinking that they're going to change things, and they're the ones that suffer, and then they give up. And that's sad, because there's all these people who go through that process. And then they say, like in martial arts, most martial arts disciplines speak is do not fight. I always say, what did Obi-Wan do when he was fighting Darth Vader? He turned his lightsaber off. You could say, oh, that's self-sacrifice, but you could also say he chose not to fight. So, but like I mean, that was sort of going off topic, but like, yeah, if you look at that principle of to not participate in, it's to step back. Well, what are you going to do when you step back? Is if you run away, then you have to start again. So you still need to keep your ground, but you don't want to fight. How do you do that? You focus on yourself and the people around that you care about. You know, do what you can to um, focus on the things that matter, regardless of the fact that you're facing oppression. You know, and I think that works for changing the way you think about being. You know, I look at myself how I get upset about things, and I get wish things were different and all that. And it's like, well, I can focus on making my situation better, and see what I can do with that. And I think if everyone did a little bit like that, well, not even everyone, if enough people did that, it would have that's where change happens. So it's when people get stuck in the us and them fighting back and forth, it just keeps escalating. And this is where um, what happens is people actually then become predisposed to expect a certain outcome. So it's like a negative bias, but it's more of a negative perception or so yeah, look, fair enough if you don't trust certain things, and then you can say, look, I don't trust this or I don't trust that because of my past experiences, and I can attest to that. I have those same things, but then at the same time I still have to have a certain amount of trust in certain things, otherwise I couldn't function. So how do you resolve that? How do you rationalize that? You know, if you go about trying to change a system, you'll be targeted, and they will you'll be pushed aside and destroyed. They'll label you as a subversive or a change agent or someone who's going against their system, and you'll suddenly have things all this power up against you. Whereas if you go, well, I'm not going to fight that. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to, you know, if they're trying to, make the thing, sad thing is that people will say, well, in the end, the tyrants or the oppressors win because they have the power. They have the weapons, the guns, the bombs, the technology, but they can't. If that's all they're doing, they're going to fall apart at some point. And if you, so they break it down to, um, and words are used to put people into these situations where you're either pro or anti. You're um, so many different polarizing, but basically, if you participate, then you're spending your energy for the gains of this thing. Whereas if you can somehow step away, step back, and focus on your own things in relation to helping and still being within some connecting with others, it's better than getting stuck in that. MJG says, hi, are you with the heart? Are says, hi, MJG. Are sure says, I've been calling out patterns that are against my boundaries. It's scary and messes with my head. I feel lonely yet whole within. So that's a really good point where you're calling out those patterns that are against your boundaries, and that could be within whether you're calling them out towards other people because you've got these boundaries, or even calling them out towards yourself and saying to yourself, because I do this myself all the time, I'll create boundaries, but then I won't protect them, or I won't keep a safe distance from, and then it sets me up for pain or disaster. So it's difficult, but and in that respect, you're not fighting a fight in that sense, creating boundaries, and in a lot of ways, creating boundaries when someone comes close to crossing that boundary, you don't retreat, you step back, and they still have to, you don't want to move the boundary, or if you want to protect that boundary, you say, I am not going to accept that, but you don't push the boundary back into their position and make it further in their position. So that's not fighting, and again, even the language of these things is, everything, not everything, but so much words come from the etymologies that comes from places like that, protecting a boundary. Protecting a boundary can be stepping back. If the person crosses into your boundary and you've stepped back, that you're still protected. You don't have to engage with them at that point. If they keep going, then you keep walking back. You're not retreating. And in fact, you might think that you're going against your boundary. You're just stopping them from going any further. So but you're not pushing into their space. But if someone crosses your boundary and then you have a reaction to it, they can see that as being aggressive. And that's not what your intention is. Your intention is to actually have something you protect for safety. It's very difficult to navigate all this stuff. But yeah, Sure says, yeah, I feel lonely yet whole within that. So there is a big thing with that, isn't it? You have, when you put up boundaries, it does isolate you, and this is another thing. So people who do put up boundaries get labeled isolationists because they don't openly allow people to walk in and back into their space. And that's actually, you could argue that, you know, calling someone an isolationist just because they're putting up boundaries because they're constantly getting hurt and abused and they're wanting to protect themselves, it's actually abusive to label them that, because that's trying to push them into a point of making himself vulnerable to be abused or hurt. So and it is a difficult thing. Even just putting up boundaries is such a difficult thing, because we are separating ourselves from something that we had that didn't have a thing there, and suddenly there is. But the reason why it's there is because it was being abused, and we had to do that to protect ourselves. And what I was talking about before was stepping back, and if someone crosses the boundaries, sometimes stepping back means they have to step again to come back further into your space. And they've seen you step back and hold your ground again. You're not running off and retreating, but you're not allowing them to you know, take advantage of you or hurt you. And it is, yeah, it's difficult. It's been a nice chat tonight. So Are you sure says navigating is the hardest? It's unknown and difficult. Yeah, it is. That's a really, yeah, not knowing what's going to happen when it's unknown, isn't it? I don't know. It's it is being bold to actually take that initiative to take those steps or those choices to follow that path. I think it for me, some of it has gotten easier, but it is very lonely in some ways. Um, I think it's very difficult because when we're forced to put up boundaries, other people don't see why in a lot of cases, and then they see, what would our reaction or actions, and then they might see it as being too far, too much, but it's just because they don't know why. Some people are understanding, and they're like, you know, some people know exactly why too, and they're like, "That's great, you finally did that. You finally put your boundaries up. Good on you. You're standing up for yourself." And they understand how difficult it is. I found one of the most difficult things with um, putting up boundaries is as quick as I'll put these boundaries. This is in the past. It's still a bit better now, but it's put up those boundaries and they come along and it gets tested, and I just allow those boundaries to be walked all over, and then I feel ashamed or I feel like I've let myself down. And it took me a long time to actually realize that if you're going to put up boundaries, you have to keep them there, and only you like don't make allowances. I think that's the biggest thing, is that people that are going to go against those, push those boundaries down that you put up, when they see that you've created a boundary, they're going to test it and they're going to push it real hard, try and knock it over. And if you just let them, then they've completely won at that point. And they almost, I've even experienced this where they've laughed and we had glee over it, because they're like, I mean, that's the saying, a pushover. When people say, oh, you're a pushover, it's like someone who's put a boundary up or tried to put up boundary, or maybe not even had a boundary at all. And it's there's people just, that's where the sayings, they'll walk all over you. If you're a pushover, they'll walk all over you. So, I mean, this is different to fighting. This is just protecting yourself from allowing other people. And like I say, you can you don't want to like keep stepping back so much that you've lost your direction. You give someone a chance. Like, so this is my biggest problem. Put up a boundary, people just knock it over straight away. And then I feel like I've completely failed. And then at that point, I'm dominated and being stuck in that situation. So, you lose sort of self-dignity and hope and all that. Aisha says being tested for putting boundaries up, for putting boundaries is like energy drain. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's because you put all this effort into putting them up, but then I've found after really putting that effort to keep that boundary there, it actually requires less effort. It requires less, this is my experience and opinion, it requires less effort to keep it there than it does to deal with the ramifications or the energy drain, like Aisha was saying, from having those boundaries tested or pushed over or pushed aside. And when you realize that, it makes it easier in the future to keep those boundaries up, because when you say to yourself, it's actually easier to keep that boundary up than it is to deal with the pain of putting up a boundary and not really keeping it in place. It's very, very interesting. It's like yeah. For me, it wasn't until I actually got that result from putting it in place and realizing that it wasn't that much effort. All I had to do was keep it there. Don't allow it. You know, one of my biggest problems having the people pleasing traits and also being friendly and um, wanting to help people and share and all that stuff. I've become so closed off because of past negative experiences. I'm not able to be in that position as much these days, and it's I wish I could, but so that's sad. And again, that goes back to the loneliness of that. You know, that's why I appreciate connection here with everyone because it's and anyone I meet in day to day because it is lonely when you do that because when you close yourself off in a way you have to protect yourself because as until I've healed more of my people pleasing, it'll I will be predisposed to being taken advantage of. So when I should say no to something, I just agree to something and then regret it afterwards. And that's obviously not everything, it's just some things. But when I and so it creates a lot of pain because yeah, means I'm not getting to enjoy, simple things. So it's been really nice tonight. We talked about some really cool stuff. I mean, it's difficult stuff, but I think we've had a really good conversation about quite a few different topics. So I might end the stream. Um, like I said, I've got a really busy week this week. It's been really nice having a chat with everyone tonight, and I look forward to doing it again soon. I really do. Things are starting to really happen in my life. I've got some really exciting things happening this week. Super exciting. I'm so excited. So I'm happy about stuff. And I'm also really, I've got busy. I've got some assignments due for my course. And, you know, both courses I'm doing, but particularly one of them I've got a major one done because one of the courses finishes at the end of this week or the start of next week. So, yeah. Aisha says, have a great week. Thanks, Aie. You too. Have an awesome week. So, and I look forward to showing everyone the next bit on this guitar. I'm looking at over here. Needs a little bit of work. It's going to be good. I'm excited because it's going to be fun. And again, this guitar is a project that I started a long time ago. It sat there. I'm finally back to actually doing the final steps So don't give up on, like, you can put stuff to the side and bring it back, and it feels so good when you do. I'm not going to worry about the fact that I didn't get it done earlier. It's getting done now, you know. Harmony Seeker says, bye all. Thanks for being here, Harmony Seeker. I'm so glad, you know, even though you've changed what you're doing, like, I'm so glad you found what you want to do, you know. And I'd like to chat to you sometime about, you know, all that stuff, learning about how to actually, because you're doing the right way of doing it is doing a course, and, you know, so yeah, but it's exciting to hear what you're working on, and I think you're going to be really good at it. You'll make good connections with people, and it's really great news. So thanks for being here. Thanks everyone. We in the chat we had Highly Sensitive Healer, we had MJG, we had Kat, Harmony Seeker. Are you sure? Thank you all, and anyone who's been here listening, and anyone who watches the stream on replay. Thank you all. Have a great week, everyone. Much love to everyone.